y'all. Hey. We're on the other side of this April 8th, 2024 eclipse, and I am digging this energy so hard, dude.
It's nice.
It's so good.
It's activating.
It is so activating. I feel like a little stick of dynamite every day. I love that. I mean,
Me
after having lain in a puddle for the better part of 2 years with just tiny little spurts of energy that didn't last long.
Not very long at all.
This feels like a rocket taking off. It's fan-fucking-tastic.
It is. It feels a little manic to me, which is why I'm like, okay, bitch, like let's ease our way into this, because I don't want to go off half-cocked and like find myself a couple of weeks down the road just like completely burnt out again. That's how I have to approach it, because I just know me personally that in the past when I've felt this way, I've like been like, and let's get everything done today. And that's no fun. It's more fun to like space things out and and like take my time with things still, even though, but it, it's so funny because like, even in a small way, like I bought a bunch of art months ago, and it all came and like, it came and like rolled up in a tube. I didn't even open the tube because I was like too overwhelmed. I was like, I can't deal with this. I don't know where to put it, blah, blah, blah. Simple
then I'm
thing.
going to have to get it framed.
And I'm going to get it framed. Just like all this stuff. And then the other day, post-eclipse.
It might as well have been, girl. That's what it feel like. But I mean, good in a good way.
In the best way.
In the best way.
I took everything out and like started hanging some stuff up. I was like, okay, I remember you. This energy is coming back to me. I'm like remembering myself.
That's what it feels like to me too. A remembrance.
Yeah.
A like remembrance of like, remember when you had energy and wanted to like just go do things?
It used to just be normal.
And not feel like if all I ever do for the rest of my life is lay on this love seat and binge watch shows and think about them, then I don't think it sounds so bad. Like I wasn't in a like terrible place. I just was like, well, I guess I'm really embracing the beingness of the human being.
Yeah.
Because I sure ain't doing shit.
That's it. Just the like, let me just like marinate in this. Yeah, it's so interesting because my whole life I've never allowed myself to sit still long enough to come to any of these conclusions before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, collectively we've all been that way, right? Like with capitalism and just being women and never being given permission to relax. Mm-hmm. Like everything has to be, you have to explain every little move you make, basically. Yeah. And so this last couple of years with the quarantine, COVID, and all of that has just led me down this path of slow ease, enjoying, attuning, noticing, just whatever, And for a while it was like, okay, well, I'm gonna notice my ass sitting on this couch watching these shows,
I know, yeah. I'm like, I really feel like it's one of those zoom out things, right? So like, there have been a lot of creators who've talked about how this feels like the completion of a cycle that started in like 2020, and so they're like bookends, this eclipse energy, and it's so if you look at it that way. We took a 4-year period where we really consciously started to deconstruct and divest and deprogram and kind of just, I guess, wake up to the fact that we're in a matrix. Yeah. And then sort of figure out where we want to go with that information. Do you know what I mean?
It. Yeah. Yeah, I do. I mean, I reflect back on 2020. For me, I was living in Dallas. I had just separated from my ex-wife. We had split up. She had sort of let me know she would be fine staying married as long as I was comfortable with her having also a harem of other women. I was like,
and she didn't even, she didn't like signal that and use different language. Like she
straight up said harem.
So it's like, no, you couldn't misunderstand at all.
I'm being 100% literal. She was like, I'm cool with you and all. you can stay here and keep managing the house and the pets and the finances and working constantly and cleaning and, you know, or managing the, you know, housekeepers or whatever, if we were able to afford that. But me, I'm gonna go get me a couple of girlfriends. And I was like, you know what? I half want to stick around just to see if you can pull it off. Yeah. Which I'm sure she didn't, but you know, God bless the adventure she must have put herself on. But anyway, so November 2019 is when she let me know that bombshell. Thank God, because what happened was,
oh my God, if you'd have gotten trapped,
if I had gotten trapped, because she lost her job. She ended up losing her job during before,
and you couldn't go nowhere.
No, we couldn't go nowhere. I would have literally gotten trapped.
You'd have been stuck in a harem, girl.
I would have been in that harem. I'd have been having to manage all them bitches. And be like, Tracy, it is not your day.
Tracy, we really need to get you on the schedule, my love. Really need to get you on the schedule.
You cannot just be popping up here anytime. You are on Wednesdays and that's it. I'm sorry, baby. You got to go get you another one too.
Isn't it cool how everything, when you look back on it though, like how things order themselves for your highest good when you look at it like, thank God you got out of there at the end of tail end of 2019 because the shit show was about to commence.
And it did. And so then I moved. So because my job was in Dallas at the time, we lived in Madison, Wisconsin. I was flying back and forth to Dallas every other week to go do my job. And she dropped that bombshell and I was like, let me give it a second. Let me give it a little thought. Let me think about how I want to do this. Do I want to be your harem manager or do I just want to like dip?
Yeah.
And I was like, and you know, the thing about it is, and it's really, you know, I make light of it because I kind of have to survive. Mm-hmm. But you know, there's a deep well of pain there because, oh damn, here come the tears.
Girl, let him go.
Because we had like animals, like a little family, you know? And this was just like an easy separation from the point of view of no children, you know? But still we had 2 cats and 2 dogs and we had to like split everybody up and it's traumatizing. So of course you're not going to choose that if you don't have, if you have any other option. So I definitely, you know, I joke about like, let me give it a thought. I really did give it a thought. I was like, let me think about this because we had a pretty good life. We had just renovated a house and, we intellectually were really a good match because we're both really smart and we like to talk about the same kinds of things. We had the same values, most of which I didn't really know I had until I met her because she sort of was my exposure. Them out of you. Well, yeah, she was my exposure.
She just
to
mirrored
those
them for you,
which I didn't even know were there. Yeah, so I was always, you know, grateful to her for that, and I think that's what kept us together for over a decade. But there at the end, you know. That's really tough. And here's one of the things why I really resonate with why, for example, I understand what women are going through in these heterosexual marriages, like where they're feeling trapped, you know, where it's not good for them, is because like I understand how your empathy can be weaponized against you. Like I think she probably not consciously, expected me to choose the betterment of the whole realm, quote unquote, of our, you know, creation, like the betterment of our household. And we had just moved into the house that we had renovated for over a year together, like a few months prior to this whole news. And so, and things were going great for her at work and like, you know, whatever. And so we were in this period of like, things seemed to be looking up and going well. And then like, the strangest shit happened. Like Halloween in Madison that year, 2019, we had a deep freeze. It was like below 20 degrees on Halloween, and we're so much so that kids had to wear their coats over their costumes for trick-or-treating, which was something, so I remember that. One of our cats got out, and this is the most bizarre thing because we had rescued these cats 6 years prior on a trip to Decorah, Iowa. They were on the side of a riverbank with no houses around, and my ex decided we needed to rescue them. And anyway, so we had these 2 kittens coming back from this trip, and they were presumably from the same litter, 2 orange tabby cats. I didn't know what their, you know, how they were. I don't know how to sex cats. Like I can't tell because they're kittens. So we thought they were both girls. We brought them to the vet. The vet never said they weren't girls. We brought them to get spayed. You know, we went through one of those things where it was like they do like 100 spays and neuters in a day. So I never really talked to them. They didn't even say nothing to me.
Oh my gosh.
This cat I thought was a girl was a boy the whole time.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's hilarious until what happened was, sorry, trigger warning, sad outcome. The cat's fine, I'm sure, but he had run away. And because we didn't know he was a boy, whenever we started calling around to like the animal shelters and stuff, I asked for an orange tabby that was a girl. Well, they didn't have an orange tabby that was a girl. And come to find out, just because of a number of things, like his little microchip was registered to the wrong address, so they mailed us a paper letter to like the wrong address. We didn't get it in time, and they had adopted him out. And there's literally nothing you can do at that point. And I was just like, this happened right before she tells me, hey, I want to get a harem, and you can stick around if you want. So I was like, okay, the chips are about to fall. Like I see it coming.
Yeah, you could see the tower moment, girl.
I was like, I'm in a fucking tower moment right now, this bitch. It went on and on. Like she actually took 2 trips. She took a trip over Thanksgiving to Guatemala to visit her girlfriend. I didn't know that until after.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right. I paid for that. I stayed home and watched the kids, the animals and stuff while that was happening. And when she arrived there, she had been in the Peace Corps when she was in her early 20s in Guatemala. So it was no big deal for her to go there. She spoke the language fluently and stuff and had contacts and more than that.
Did she have a contact?
She had some contacts. Okay. Like this woman is the reason.
She was out recruiting for her harem, girl.
She was. That's true. Well, because she's the only reason I even know that there is such a thing as like a mobile hotel, a concept of a mobile hotel in like Central America where you can like drive your car in and they close. It's basically like a garage, but it's where people can go to hook up. It's like pay by the hour.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I was like, you nasty.
Damn.
That's gross.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm like, but hard times call for, whatever. But she was down there. As soon as she landed, she didn't call me or text me. And I was like, okay, well, I thought we were like literally like married and like talked all the time and like happy and whatever. And then, our cat disappears, gets adopted by someone else. She goes on this trip because she needs to reconnect with like her, playing this whole card, like, I'm having midlife crisis or whatever. And I'm like, well, let me help you because I'm your wife, whatever. I'll help pay for you to go down there. I'll make sure everything is cool here while you're getting back in touch with who you were. You know what I mean?
Right.
Come to find out she was there with her girlfriend, but, and I won't even get into it, but I will just say, just for added color, that she did call me from Guatemala at one point and ask me, like I'm a fucking secretary, to find her a hotel. I was like, bitch,
you're there. Girl, you boots on the ground. Go get you a hotel.
Speak the language.
Right. Yeah.
Literally, I'm not your secretary.
Well, she wanted you to find it so you could pay for it.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, all kinds of stuff from that time is really fun. But she also had connections in Brazil and had been in like an exchange program from Iowa when she grew up in Iowa. And so she had friends and contacts and spoke Portuguese too. So she speaks Spanish and Portuguese. It was really cool,
Yeah,
I was like, my wife's cool. Until my wife was like, I'm so cool, I'm going to get a harem. And I was like, you ain't that cool.
Yeah. Yes, girl.
And so she ended up going to Brazil. She came back from that trip and kind of told me like, yeah, you're right. Your suspicions are correct.
Yeah.
And I want a harem and I'm going to go to Brazil now. And I was like, this feels like a time when I need to make a stand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even though it meant breaking up our home and breaking up our animals and all that kind of stuff, like I can't imagine. We were also in the process of adopting a kid.
Oh my God.
We were 80% down the pathway to adopting a child.
Yeah.
Which would have been the ultimate trap for me.
Oh, for sure.
Because had we had a toddler, I mean, I wouldn't have known my head from a hole in the ground to even see what was going on around me. So it all just really worked out for my ultimate good.
Yeah. I mean, because you were on like a dying timeline.
Yeah, that's what it was. It just looks like everything's crashing around you and you're like, wait, what the fuck is happening? Like the earth is shifting underneath you.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we ended up splitting up the last time I talked to her, I gave her a hug in our foyer. And I even told her at the time, I was like, it's like I'm hugging a stranger. It's like there's nothing between us. There's nothing between us. And that's hard to see. You know, it's like I just spent 13 years with this person who could give literal no fucks about me, about my experience in this process. Yeah. Just depended on how I operate in the world to ensure that she would always have me there, because she thought I was so enmeshed, so codependent, so concerned about her happiness, so concerned about the happiness of the animals, that I was more concerned about that than I would be about my own good. And she was right to think that, because I had really behaved that way.
Yeah, and that is what I am noticing about this trajectory, I guess, that you're on, or that you've been on, is that you are you're like reverse processing your relationship trauma. You know, like you're following these threads back.
Yeah, you were saying that because, like, it's so funny too, because the relationship that I spent the least amount of time in, which was the Ross and Phoebe, which was the most recent thing that I got involved in, that felt more impactful to me from the point of view of like being difficult to leave and like reprogram my brain after all of that fuck shit. And yet this was the longest relationship that I've ever been in. Someone who I did love and appreciate and thought was cool and loved her mind. And like, you know, we had our problems, of course. You know, I think we probably, just like most of my relationships, probably should have just been friends. We probably should have never tried to make it romantic, because I just don't have like a sustained, I don't know if it's like, I don't activate sexually like for very long. Yeah. I don't know if it's the tism or what, or if it's trauma. It's probably trauma.
Yeah. It probably is trauma.
Abuse, sexual abuse and stuff. That is impacting that. But like whenever I activate on a relationship sexually, it's usually like in a burst of energy that looks very much like addiction, because it's addiction. And then I sort of wake up out of that stupor. And luckily with Ross and Phoebe, it happened. I woke up progressively, but after a month, and I was like, and then I started to try to extricate myself, and that usually takes some time. And it took another month for me to completely extricate, and not because they were keeping me there, but because I was still trying to figure out, what am I even doing here? Yeah. How did I end up here? How did I get snagged in their sex web?
I think it was a catalyst that then brought whatever online in you had been dormant.
Totally dormant.
So that you could process finally feel this stuff, because you hadn't processed.
No, because it is so hurtful. It is so hurtful to like be someone's person. Yeah. And to be like disregarded over and over again. Right. You know? Yeah. Not to be like weepy, but
girl, if you need to weep, you weep. That's the thing about the bookend of this whole thing. It's like, we have used the last 4 years, hopefully most of us have, to decondition to the point where we're like, it's okay for me to cry. It's okay for me to feel my feelings, because I think that's where we all were when you look back to 2019. We were all just little human doings, navigating through the world and not really allowing ourselves to deeply feel. And obviously that's a generalization, and maybe some people got it before others, but I know for me, and I've talked about it before on the podcast, you were not gonna see me cry. Yeah. And then you know, fast forward to not only was I crying, but like before I left the mortgage industry, I was routinely crying in my boss's office. Yeah. Like, and then, I mean, there was a part of me that was like, who even are you? Also, that Thrive mascara doesn't cry well. You look like you got little spider legs all over your face. I was like, oh, I need to go back to my waterproof. Anyway, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that to me is so helpful. Yeah. That you have the ability to look back on that part of your life and say, that was painful. That really hurt. And it's like your emotional body is now just catching up.
Yeah, because I have always chosen partners who I knew how to like be in relationship with. Well, if I chose you to be in a relationship with, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you are like my mother.
Yes, girl. Real talk. Real talk.
Real talk.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what we do too.
Yeah.
And that's why I get this feeling when as I'm watching you reverse process through these relationships. And as you continue to do that, it's going to lead you back to your mother.
Yeah.
Like that is the relationship that is the sort of seat of your wounding, you know, but it's also the seat of your power because you learned so much.
And I think that because we do a lot of both and on this podcast with regards to it's this and it's that, I can appreciate that, in some dimension, my mother had to hurt me in that way to prepare me for what this game is, what this world is, what this reality is. Yeah. Because I was too like fucking pure and like doughy-eyed and like open and receptive and like just a ball of like joy, as a kid. And to like get someone from being like a ball of joy, you have to kind of like knock them off their pedestal.
Yeah. And enough. I think that this is how we're healing the generational trauma, right? Because our moms were hurt by their own experiences, and then they didn't know what to do with that. And so they unintentionally, I really don't, I don't believe people are inherently evil. I know that in the things that I've worked through or am still working through where my mom is concerned, like I know that she didn't set out to hurt me. I know that the wounds that I have were passed down to me from her unintentionally. And that to me is what the generational healing is about, is like, oh, I see it now. And so healing it in me is going to help heal it in her. Yeah. That's not sort of my objective, but that is what generational healing is. That's what it means. Yeah. And it's like, in order for me to get to a place where I could heal it, I had to have the wounds. And that is the role that our moms and or dads, but I really feel like we're growing more back toward, our matriarchal lineage, because I've always found it so fascinating that, just even from like a physical standpoint, that my maternal grandmother carried me in her womb. Yeah. Yeah. My mom carried my daughter in her womb. Like that to me feels really significant. Yeah. And so that to me is where these roles are coming from, like how we're playing this out is like they almost had to pass the wounding along to us because that's how it gets healed. They didn't have the ability and the tools and the environment and all of the things to heal. And that's not a cop out, because it's not to say like, oh, well, they don't have to worry about it because we've got it. Right. Because like you don't get to continue to hurt us. Like we know now, we see it. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to continue to put ourselves in those positions. But what we got, when my mom experienced extreme trauma in her childhood, I was physically present. Yeah. Yeah. That's my wound too. Whether she meant to pass it on to me or not, it is there. Do you know what I mean? And so like that's what we're doing, I feel like. And that's what you are working back through. It's like you got to this point, because you talk a lot about pendulums too. Yep. Like this is swinging back to this is your origin story, Yeah. And it's a lot. It's a lot. So when you feel overwhelmed by that, it's like, of course you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And grateful too, because, and here, this is the other part of it, is that we can't even feel what's been done to us until we're in a safe enough place to feel what's been done to us, which is why our moms never felt it.
never got to work on that because they, you know, in a lot of ways, they probably still don't feel fully safe.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah. No, absolutely. And yeah, so the bookend part for me feels significant because I see what bullet I bypassed by all of that happening in the way that it happened, even though it was very traumatizing for me and I felt like very put out to pasture. And you know, all my friends that we had together abandoned me, which, you know, is what happens in relationships. So I'm not totally shocked by that, but you know, I definitely feel like I got ejected from my life.
Yeah.
And, all I have to say is that I've had an incredible time this last 4 years. I don't regret it at all. I think if I had to go back and be in that position before, I might still be hesitant about the journey because it was tough.
Yeah.
But being on the other side of this makes it definitely worth having endured. Not that I had a choice, but I'm grateful for it. And that's like most growth. It's like I still probably wouldn't go back and be like, oh, it's going to be fine, you know, to myself. I'd probably be like, you know, gird yourself, girl.
Yeah. And I remember thinking in my 20s, sometimes in my 20s, where something that felt catastrophic at the time would happen, you know, like, you know, separating from my husband, like breaking up my family, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you know, then we since reconciled, but it's like, I viewed things so linearly that it was like, oh, that can never be fixed. That can never be repaired. You know what I mean? And it's like, and then I would see these points in my life where I was like, yeah, you fucked that up. That can never be fixed. And then, and I'm probably going to say it wrong because I don't speak Japanese. It's not my primary language, but then I read about, kintsugi in Japanese, where it's this Japanese art form where they repair broken pottery with like gold or silver or platinum, like some precious metal.
Yeah.
And it's art. Do you know what I mean? Then it's like, you're not hiding the fact that it's cracked. You're accentuating.
Yeah.
And that precious metal that's binding that vessel back together makes it stronger in that place. And it's like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, so now I can, that when I read that about that practice, I was just like, oh, that's what we're all doing. You know, like we can try to hide the fractures and pretend they're not there and hope that everyone else overlooks them as well. Like, let's just pretend that there's not a giant crack, you know, down the middle of my bowl. Or we can let the fall apart happen and then fuse it back together and just like let that tell its own story. And I think that's what we're doing now, is like we're just letting our stories be seen and heard and acknowledged. And it isn't about the external validation piece. It's about knowing that, I broke apart there, but like I'm stronger for it now.
Yeah.
And I'm more beautiful for it now.
Yeah. I definitely feel that way. I didn't even know who I was before. I was just going through the motions and surviving.
Yeah.
And now I know who I am. You know, you can't push me off my square anymore. You know, I'm going to keep being a ball of joy. And
Agreed.
Everybody can suck a dick.
I know. Because like when I get knocked off my square, I feel like that's me. That's me.
That's me knocking
falling
myself
down,
off. Yeah.
knocking, you know,
Exactly.
with all of the ways that I'm trying to navigate. But like, I feel like that is definitely the goal, is just to be so sovereign and so autonomous that you just are like, I am aware of who I am, and that's all I need to be in this life.
I know my heart through and through, and I trust myself with others because I know that I don't have any instincts to hurt or malign. That doesn't mean I haven't hurt and maligned.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I'm definitely the villain in a lot of people's story.
Yeah, and can I talk about that too? Because that was a realization that I had over the course of the last week. I was out of town, and I realized that I was having a conversation with my uncle who is studying forgiveness, and he made a comment about my not having forgiven my mom, and I was like, no, I have 100% forgiven my mom. And he said, I don't feel that from you. Like, I don't feel like, and I was just very like clinical almost about it. You know, I'm like, she is who she is. She can't help who she is. I've forgiven her for, whatever. And he was like, do you even know what, like, have you even worked with the wounding that you experienced? And it's like, I mean, literally within 10 minutes of that conversation, I was in tears because no, I haven't. Yeah. And what I realized in looking at that from a different angle, which is great because that's what we're all doing is helping each other get perspective. Like we're gaining perspective through our relationships with each other to find our blind spots and excavate, our shadows and all that, which is so cool. And it's amazing that we do that for each other.
It is.
But like, I realized that when I got sober in 2015 and I started doing step work in recovery, it was about cleaning up my side of the street, and it was about taking radical personal responsibility for the ways in which I had hurt people.
Yeah.
Recognizing how I had harmed others.
Yeah.
And taking responsibility for that, which is great. Mm-hmm. And that was deep work that has changed my life. But I never did then follow through with any other mechanism or modality for really looking at how I have been hurt. I just was like,
yes.
Oh, I have forgiven myself for the ways that I have hurt other people, and that's enough. And it's not enough. It's not enough. And that's what, and I'm just figuring out like, no, there's a whole other side of that. And it isn't about blame and it isn't about guilt. It's about acknowledgement and saying like, oh yeah, I hurt. Well, it's like I am wounded from these different interactions with people and situations that I can now look at and say like, yes, that hurt me. And I am carrying a wound from that time in my life. And that is necessary. I don't know how I thought I was just going to skate on out of it, but you can't,
Well, I don't even know that we were cognizant that it was going to be work we needed to do. We thought all we had ever talked about is just clearing, like you said, our side of the street. And this work is not necessarily about making other people clear their side of the street.
Right.
It's about acknowledging that this impacted me. This had a negative effect on my life.
Yeah.
And holding yourself with compassion.
Yeah.
In that awareness.
Yeah. And it's like, when I made my amends to my stepchildren in recovery, it was like, I did the best I could, and it wasn't very fucking good sometimes. Yeah. And I'm just saying, like, I recognize that it wasn't the best.
Yeah.
But because I do believe that usually people are just doing the best they can with what they've got. And it's about holding paradox. You know what I mean? And like, that's the part that has been healing for me is to recognize that even though I've taken personal responsibility for hurting my stepkids, I still hurt my stepkids.
Yes, that's the thing.
And so even though whether my mom takes personal responsibility for hurting me or not, I get to say like, well, I hurt. Like, you hurt me.
Right.
Intentionally or unintentionally. I don't need you to acknowledge it necessarily. That's the different part. It's like, I don't need you to acknowledge it.
Right.
I don't need you to understand it. I don't need you to do anything with it. I need to know. I need to be able to look at myself holistically and be like, here is wounding that you're carrying from this relationship that was the most influential relationship of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was the most formative
relationship
that you had.
Yeah.
And just saying, like, then when you put it in that kind of perspective, you're like, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I can work with that. You know, I can work with that. It makes me feel empowered to see, like, yeah, okay, that happened. I don't have to, like, I don't need anybody else to do anything.
Right.
It's life altering, path changing that I see it.
Yes.
It changes the way I interact now with my inner self.
Yeah. Yes, because it's like these things that hurt us the worst are things that we don't even, in a lot of ways, realize are there. They're just a part of, it's like, our consciousness has like this film over it, like a sticker. I always think of it like stickers. I was trying not to use this example because I'm like, this is stupid, but it feels like stickers. Like, like when you had your Trapper Keeper.
Mm-hmm.
And you put like stickers on it and stuff.
Like Garbage Pail Kids, girl?
Like Garbage Pail Kids, girl. Scratch and sniff and whatnot.
Some little Lisa Franks.
Yeah, girl. It's just that there's like a sticker underneath all the stickers.
Yeah.
And we think that that's the bottom, but that's still a sticker. It's like, we gotta keep peeling it back.
Yeah.
And it's just that we've covered it up with so many other things. We think, oh, well, there's nothing else there. This surface level is all there is. No, we came in with some pre-installed stickers that we gotta peel back and get to the edge of. But they cover everything so much so that we don't even see them because we think that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like for me as I start to deconstruct all of the, the child sexual abuse and like, living in, basically rape culture and like white supremacy, patriarchy being, because I was a talented kid. Mm-hmm. And I'm realized autistic, but I didn't know that then. I just thought I was like a talented weirdo,
Yeah.
And that was basically my identity.
Yeah. And I feel like for a while there, like artistic and autistic were just used synonymously.
Yes. It's so funny how they have so many letters in common, right?
Girl.
I think that's really yes, girl. I love that. I think about that a lot, artistic and autistic. So, and thank God I had that community to be weird in.
Yeah.
Because had I not had that community to be weird in, I would have definitely been institutionalized. There's just literally no way that I would have. I mean, I'd like to give myself more credit, but I feel like that is the pathway that helped me get to any sort of sense of stability and normalcy. Otherwise, I probably would have just been kept like a pet by my mom for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for how all the chips fell.
Yeah.
But now that I'm looking back on it, there are just some things, some stickers I got to recognize.
Yeah.
Are there.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I know one of the things that, when we first started this podcast and we were talking about how, as we continue to record, and obviously, we feel like this is an art form, and the more you practice, the better you get. Right. And
we hope.
we hope. And while I love to go back and listen to some of our like first recordings, it's like it's crazy to me how much growth in over such a short span of time, because like there are some things where I will hear myself say something and it's like I don't even believe that now. And it's not even been that, like, what are we talking, like 6 months? Yeah. So like
crazy
stuff that I said 6 months ago, I find kind of cringy now because it's like these, like monolithic statements.
Monolithic statements.
Hell, even like a month ago, when I was like on a rant about the boomers, like you can't just malign an entire generation of people and lump them all in and be like, well, these motherfuckers, blah, blah, blah. Because that's the same
It's the same energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that the reason we talk about it being like peeling back layers of an onion or peeling stickers is because it's constant different perspectives that help you expand your awareness and have different points of being able to see different points of view. And so you're like, oh, I get it. I kind of get it. You know what I mean? Like, and knowing about the energy that is tied to each like generational iteration on this planet. And obviously nothing is true all of the time.
Right.
And you can't make blanket statements, but it's like, if you look at like where people's Pluto is in their chart, you know, like we're I think Pluto and Libra people. Yeah. So like we're going to have a different way of looking at things than somebody who has their Pluto and whatever else, you know, like I don't really know a lot about I know just enough about astrology for it to make a little bit of sense to me, but I can never verbalize it.
Girl, same. Girl, same.
So, but you know, it's like we get these different, it's like each generation gets a different set, you know?
Yes.
And, you know, like maybe we're playing our thing out in the, you know, the Full House set, but our parents were in the Brady Bunch set. Do you know what I mean? It's just like a different way of seeing. And it's like, when you look at it that way, again, that like helps take some of the rigidity away, where you don't need to explain why they did what they did or how they did it or whatever. It's just like, well, you just know like that's the way shit was then, and now it's not.
Right.
And it's fine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like just making the big, you know, I do have, I am often in touch with my Arsenal energy, especially right now. Cause like I'm feeling my Aries, you know, like I'm an Aries rising, and we're in Aries season. Like I feel like I could just shoot up into the atmosphere, and I love it. I love it. But I have to remember too that like, I don't know, like I just spent almost 3 weeks with my grandma, who says like legit every single thing that comes into her head, whether she ought to say it or not.
Yeah, sure.
Which, you know, props for making it to, you know, like almost 89 years of age at this point, and just saying whatever the fuck you want. Mm-hmm, like, cool. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But,
we're going to try to do that too.
I know. But then like, so it's like, on the one hand, I'm looking at her and I'm like, can you ever just not say whatever the fuck you think? And then it's like, then I listened to one of our podcasts from, you know, 4 months ago, and I'm like, can you shut the fuck up about some shit that you don't even really understand? Cause like now you kind of do, but I love that they're there. Like it's the same thing I use my like Facebook profile for. It's like a living journal, you know, a testament to my growth. I love when stuff comes up on memories where I'm like, it's like that meme where it's like, I have nothing. There's no person I have less in common with than the me that wrote my Facebook statuses in 2008. Seriously? It's like truth. Okay. For real. I definitely feel that because, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love seeing it. Like, yeah, it is a little cringe, but it's also like, well, that was the iteration of me at that time. And now I get to see like, right, because you only had like 3 fucking points of awareness. Yeah. And now you have unlimited points of awareness. I mean, not unlimited. I'm sure that there is a number you could put on it. I'm not Jesus and fully enlightened or whatever. But do you know what I mean? Like, yes, it's just like so many additional points of awareness where you're just like, oh, bless your heart.
I know, bless
your little cotton picking heart.
Yes, girl. Yes, girl. I feel that way a lot about myself, but now it's just sort of my default is like, oh, girl, you know, with myself, I'm like, you know, you'll come around one day, you know, and I just hold myself with a lot of lightness and compassion because I am just on this journey just like everybody else. And I feel like I have a right to be messy. I have a right to be flawed. I have a right to be not perfect.
That is the thing, is that life is messy. Yeah. And I feel like it's messy by design. And at some point, we got sold this bill of goods that we're supposed to have our shit together. And I don't know who put that bill of goods together. Yeah. But they was a lie.
They was a lie.
Like, it's not.
Nobody knows what's going on.
Right.
ever. We're all just theorizing. We're all just reacting to stimuli. It's not like anybody has a clear picture of anything ever ever will.
It's a great big experiment.
It's a great big experiment.
Great big messy experiment. In the peach tree dish. Did you see that?
No.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Did she say peach tree?
She said peach tree.
Poor bless her heart, girl.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably what we'll name this episode.
The peach tree dish. Yes, girl. But, I think about that in terms of like the Quiet Onset Nickelodeon documentary that just came out. And all of the reckoning that's coming around with that, because it's exactly what you just said. It's the phase we're in now is looking at our own pain and how we were harmed by these systems and using that information now in the light of how we see it to make different decisions going forward. And in fact, Hollywood is kind of crumbling right now under all of this and for a variety of reasons that have been probably a long time coming. But that's a reality that we're facing too, is like looking at the culture that we have built up and what it was built on and what it was selling us and who it was actually for and all of this grossness. And then also, recognizing, this is just going to create a ripple of awareness, I think, in people's lives, just like it has for me, because I've had some awareness in the last week about some clarity around some abuse that I experienced in my family that wasn't clear to me. I knew there was like some weirdness, but I didn't have any, as an adult, when you come into adulthood and you become safe enough to start looking at your childhood trauma, my mom is an easy target because it was like, it was my most prominent relationship. So that was quote unquote easiest for me to identify there was something not great about that.
Right.
And what that was. But then all of these other like secondary, tertiary relationships when I was a child with adults.
Yes.
I've had to, just have to take time with to come around to realizing what the nature of those relationships was and whether it was healthy or abusive. And for me, I'm coming to terms with how some relationships in my family when I was a child with adults was not healthy. Yeah. And what does that mean for me going forward? Am I like going to expose that person? Am I going to do my own documentary? No. But it's information for me, and it's all coming clear because I'm able to see it in the mirror of things like Quiet Onset.
Yes.
You know
and it's
what I mean?
like we're experiencing, I feel like what we're doing is we're experiencing sort of this like generational reckoning with the fact that there are very few of us who were not abused or molested or exploited in some way on some level. And maybe it wasn't some rampant super traumatic,
trafficking, for example,
or whatever.
But which does happen to a lot of people.
Exactly. But we're reckoning with like how prolific it was for such a long time in our society.
And still is.
And that's the part where we're like, like you read stuff about how as human beings evolve, things like the what chromosome is it, the Y chromosome, whatever the male chromosome is, the Y chromosome is sort of like being phased out, and it's like, well, that makes perfect sense, because it ain't great now,
because
again, another monolithic statement that I'll probably cringe at later, but do you know what I mean? It's like it's like nature's taking care of what needs to be taken care of, but also as we continue to evolve, it's theorized that like we won't eat the way we eat now. Like we'll eat for pleasure maybe, but we won't necessarily need to eat for survival because not the way that we eat now, because our bodies will have sort of like surpassed that mechanism and gone with something,
more
cleaner
efficient.
and more efficient. Same thing with sex. Like
exactly.
It's like if the means by which you reproduce causes so much psychological and emotional damage and harm to the person that you know what I mean? It's just like, well, that's not efficient or effective.
Right.
So maybe we phase that out. And it's like, well,
Yeah. Parthenogenesis, right, baby.
Yeah. Because like
Charlotte the Stingray.
It's not great. And then like you have in other cultures, like I've read about where in some of the Asian cultures, like these women are just like, yeah, we're just not going to have sex with you anymore.
South Korea.
Yeah.
The 4B movement. And you know, I was a lesbian for over a decade, so don't listen to me too closely on this. Because I was over men for a long time now.
Yeah.
But then, and it was easy to stay in my little man-hating bubble, you know, as a lesbian. I'm gonna be real with you about that. Yeah. You know, I'm gonna be real with you about that. Like, I stayed very comfortably kind of like looking down my nose at men. Not super consciously, but kind of socially too, you know, it was just like a lot of women. And I loved it. Like I felt safe, you know, even though I was in a relationship that where, you know, as I reflect upon it, wasn't necessarily equitable to me.
Yeah.
And certainly wasn't considering my experience.
Right.
But then again, I didn't know to ask for that. So,
yeah.
You know, you can get into, and this really should be no secret to anyone, but you can be in a toxic relationship with another woman if you're a woman. So just don't go in like me, all blind and dumb, being like, oh, it's gonna be fine because it's a woman. Like, no, bitch, like you did not have a good relationship.
It's so funny that you had the biggest blinders on earth on after the decades-long relationship that you had just had with your mother.
With my mother.
And you're like, women are just safe except for her.
Except for my mom.
Clearly, she's the only, you know, outlier here. But yeah, no.
Which
like,
I guess
you were definitely totally burying that.
Completely.
That realization.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. Yeah. And, you know, I love my mom, love my ex. Like, I still miss them both because they're the two people that I was the closest to in that way. Like, we had a meeting in the minds and they really knew how to like, kind of like work me. Do you know what I mean? Like, they knew how to spin me up. And, you know, I guess while I was into that was fun, I suppose. But now I've been really enjoying for the last 4 years, just being at peace and realizing how, like, when I don't have to consider others, I get to just choose the path of least resistance for me. And I'm flowing, baby.
Hell yeah, you are.
And it's fucking great.
Yes.
And, I just want to paint the picture for everybody. Because if you're listening to this and you're contemplating, or maybe because I didn't really contemplate, I didn't have no damn choice. I mean, I could have stayed and been a financial advisor for the harem.
Yes, girl.
And you know that's probably still on the table.
I'm the director of operations.
That's probably still on the table
for this situation.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She probably had me back. She's like, you know, put me down as a reference, baby. You know what I mean? But since I'm not doing that, pursuing that, I do like think about her a lot. And, you know, I think about my mom to a lesser degree because it's been a longer time since I've been in direct relationship with my mother. But one of the things I will be completely honest about is that it's both. It's like both invigorating and freeing. And I feel like I have achieved this status of autonomy and sovereignty that I never knew I could ever have. It was not promised to me, and it feels illegal.
And you may not have gotten there. That's the thing. That's the part that I'm really gaining awareness around, and is so mind blowing to me. It's like, and you may not have gotten there had those people not,
hurt me.
Yeah.
Which is why I still have a soft space in my heart for them, even though there's not a place in my physical reality for them because of the way that they behave related to me. But I think that I know that they both love me.
Yeah.
I know that. I'm sure they still love me. That love doesn't go away, but the ability to interact with one another because of our own individual programming and where we've evolved to is just what it is.
Right.
So it's both really amazing to be in flow, be an autonomous sovereign being for however long I'm able to maintain this. This has been great so far. And it's also really sad and devastating to know that like this life that I built with someone I had to leave, and I had to separate our animals. You know, people have to separate their children whenever they sometimes, you know, and they have to at least share them. And it's like everything gets disrupted, right? That is true. And I don't want to say it's worth it. Everybody gets to decide. But for me, I'm grateful to the experience because even though everybody fucking abandoned me, like dropped me like a hot potato, friends, like all down the line, like with the exception of a couple of people who have been like you, of course, but you don't even count you because you're like part of my life, like from birth.
I'm an OG.
I mean, I do count you because like you're so important to me, but I just mean like people who have been transient in my life, who have come in and out. Mm-hmm. There have been a couple of people who have been like diehard. You know, we might not talk for months at a time, but like they're in my energy.
People. I love those people that you can just pick up like not 20 months have passed.
Right, exactly. And I'm so grateful for those people. Yeah. But, you know, it does hurt. You know, it just hurts a lot whenever you've built a friend group around being in a couple with other couples. And then like,
and then you don't get the friends in the divorce.
And I did not get the friends in the divorce, which makes me feel like, was I the and you know, the autism makes you a little annoying. I get that. And it can be. I just want to be.
You just have to find your people though, because I'm not annoyed by you in the slightest.
Well, I appreciate that. But I know that, and this is where being the villain in other people's story is okay.
Yeah.
Because I know how I can be abrasive, and not intentionally, just because I'm like not considering the same social rules that other people are necessarily. And I'm just like, hey, this is what it is. And that's how I can navigate the world, which is why I mostly stay at home and don't like interact with people. But when I have, and I've seen that my takes on things have been like hard for people.
Yeah.
I do feel badly about that, but not enough to like comfort them anymore. I'm not going to comfort you if what I say hurts.
I mean, that's the thing about the whole, you know, the whole victim villain savior paradigm. It's like when you're casting someone in the role of villain in your story, you often don't remember that someone has cast you as that role in theirs.
Yeah. And that's what we're coming to terms with. It's like, not only are we having to look at how we have been victimized, you know, not to say we always live in that space, but it has happened to us. You know, others have hurt us, even though they didn't intend to.
Right.
We've done the same thing. And that's like, in a weird way, even though having gone through 12-step programs and having done the amends, it's not like you ever are done.
Right.
You know, you're always going to be surfacing things that like, oh, well, I can see how I was completely heartless in this case, and I can see how I might have come across that way, even though it was not my intention. Intention and intent and actual harm are completely separate.
Yeah. And like just knowing like what, like there may not even have been any intent. You may have just been reacting to something internally that you weren't aware of, that you then need a little space and distance and time to be able to be like, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
You know, and
and
just allowing people to evolve and change and grow and be, and recognizing that acts are separate from people. Like behavior people are not people are not the acts that they commit.
Yeah.
And that isn't to excuse abhorrent behavior, but it's just to say that like if you don't believe that people are inherently evil, and I don't, and you can look more holistically at like, well, how did they get here? Do you know what I mean? Like it's easier to have compassion for things that people have done.
And helps you move forward. And it's not only, it's like when we practice compassion for ourselves, we're actually practicing it for others.
Right.
Because it's just a matter of time before, you know, we have an interaction with others that will mirror that back to us. And if we already have the experience of having extended compassion to ourselves in those instances, in that dynamic.
Yeah. And like, I don't want to jinx it, so like knock on wood here or whatever, but I am experiencing the world I want to experience. These things come up less and less often for me since I am just like choosing to live in a reality where people treat each other with kindness and compassion. That shows up more and more often for me.
Yeah.
because that's the world that's the reality that I am co-creating with the universe. Right. That's what I'm ordering.
That's what you're noticing about. That's what your confirmation bias is checking for.
Yeah.
It's such an important thing to notice too, because I've noticed lately for me, I get into these little TikTok holes, like black holes, where I just I'm scrolling and I'm like, what am I waiting for to come across my feed so that I can finally be done scrolling? You know?
Yes.
It's like, why am I just keeping looking? And I notice I'm like looking at that part of my awareness where, what am I trying to confirm?
Yeah. And I've noticed too, like with social media, it's getting more and more fucking boring.
Exactly.
It can't hold my attention the way it used to, because
which is cool.
Which is cool. And it's like, is that because I said to myself several times, this probably isn't healthy. This is probably not a good use of my time and energy. Mm-hmm. It would be great if I didn't spend so much time looking at a screen.
Yes.
And so now it's like the universe is like, oh, well, I'll just send you a bunch of shit you don't care about.
Boring
and then
shit.
You won't want to do it, and you'll pick up a book or
that's what
go out and walk or go play with your dog or whatever the hell. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's part of it. And I think that's what I meant whenever I said like ordering. Like I'm saying to the universe, like, enough with the social media shit, you know? And then it's like, it's all dumb. And it's like, it can't hold my attention.
No, I agree.
I'm like, thanks for that.
Yeah. You know? Thanks for that. Because now I'll go outside or I'll listen to the bird song.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always trying to work with my awareness on that, because one of the things that like reality transurfing talks about is a technique where you're always checking in with yourself to make sure, like, am I making a decision to do what I'm doing? If I'm not making a decision to do what I'm doing, then someone else has suggested that I do what I'm doing. Like through some experience that I've had, I might be by default doing something that I'm not totally conscious I want to be doing.
Yes.
So asking yourself that, interrogating. And so sometimes I'll just be scrolling in a black hole on TikTok and I'll be like, am I aware of what I'm doing? Am I choosing to do this? And it's like, yes, but also I'm not enjoying it.
Right.
And at some point, I'm going to like distance myself from this because I'm not enjoying it, and I need to check in with myself to make sure I'm doing this because I want to do this. And what am I getting at? Like constantly asking. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful that I got an opportunity to talk a little bit more about the shit show that was the dissolution of my marriage.
Yeah, because I love that you are, like I said, reverse processing back to you're on, where you're going to end up on this. And so you're just taking your time to get there.
And I'm safe. I'm safe while I'm doing it. And it's all okay. And whatever time it comes up for me, it's okay. And, you know, I really love my ex, and, you know, I love my mother, and, you know, just don't call me.
I love that.
And on that note,
the best tagline ever.
I love y'all. Yeah. Don't call us.
Yeah. Bye.